Good morning, everybody. I'm Nayani Santayuse Codina, and the topic of my presentation today is the Kingdom of the Queen Elizabeth I of England, also known as the Virgin Queen. As you can see from my outline, in the first section I'm going to introduce a bit of Queen Elizabeth I's background, then I'll continue with the beginning of the Elizabethan era, later I'll explain Queen Elizabeth I's key accomplishments, and finally I will provide you a brief conclusion. Okay, let's begin by looking at Queen Elizabeth I's background. Elizabeth was the daughter of the King Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn. In that moment of the British history, a prominent change took place in terms of religion since the English Reformation began. Such reformation consisted of splitting up the Church of England from papal authority. Then Henry VIII decided to make his own type of Christianity, which was Anglicanism. Such Anglicanism led him to divorce from those wives that couldn't give him a son as a heir. When Anne Boleyn was murdered, Elizabeth was declared automatically illegitimate. The King Henry VIII had only one son, Edward IV, who unluckily died early. Hence, the next to rule the kingdom was the Roman Catholic Mary I. As the Queen Mary was Catholic, she imprisoned Elizabeth for being suspicious of supporting Protestant rebels, and she reversed the English Reformation again. Because of this reversion of the Church again, many Protestants were burned at the stake under the law of Mary I's Queen. Thus, is it for that reason that she was known as Bloody Mary. When Mary died, her re-establishment of Roman Catholicism was reversed once again by her younger half-sister and successor of the throne, Elizabeth I. It was then when the beginning of the 45-year Elizabethan era began. So let's move on to the next issue, which is the beginning of the Elizabethan era. Elizabeth I took the throne in 1558, when she was 25 years old. The establishment of the English Protestant Church was one of the first important actions that she did as queen. In fact, she became the supreme governor of it. Finally, this Elizabethan religious settlement evolved into the Church of England. Regarding her reign, Elizabeth carried a better government in comparison to her half-sibling and her own father, since she was more tolerant and tried to avoid systematic persecution. However, after the Pope declared her illegitimate because the trouble of her dead mother, great number of conspiracies threatened her life. On the other hand, thanks to the help of her minister's secret service, she could overcome all those conspiracies. Now it's time to explain the Queen Elizabeth I's key accomplishments. By those ages, there was a clash between the old and the new religion. However, there were two important accomplishments that Elizabeth I achieved during her reign: the Act of Supremacy and the Act of Uniformity. The Act of Supremacy implied that any person who took public or church office in England had to swear allegiance to the monarch as the supreme governor of the Church of England. On the other hand, the Act of Uniformity implied the fact that everybody had to go to the church every Sunday and holidays or be fined 12 pence, which was a considerable sum of money for the poor people especially. Moreover, during her kingdom, she was known as the Virgin Queen. This interesting issue is for the reason that despite the great number of suitors and lovers that she had, she never got married. The explanation for this outcome was that in the Elizabethan period, male people were known as superior, and the tradition was to marry a woman from a different country to have a mutual agreement. Hence, if she had married to someone, she had lost her power, and England would be controlled by a different country. Finally, she decided to marry England, her country. So to sum up, and as a method of conclusion, Elizabeth I's reign was, and it is still, known as the Elizabethan era. It was a famous period since she ruled very different from the rest of her relatives, Henry VIII and her two half-siblings. She brought to her country a new act of supremacy and an act of uniformity. She turned England into the Protestantism, and her 45 years of throne provide welcome stability for the kingdom and help to forge a sense of national identity. So that is the end of my oral presentation. Here there are some references which you can consult. Thank you for your attention, and that's all.